Well, hey, it's Brian Mudd from The Morning Rush along with Lisa Treu, and we have a special guest for you this week. It is Gary Nikolits, and this is the information you need to know from the True Real Estate Group to help you understand what's going on in today's real estate environment and keep you ahead of the curve. And we are going to talk about property assessment today. And this is something that, as we've talked about the changing real estate market, you can expect changes within assessments as well. And there are often many questions that come up every year, but especially since we're going to be talking about what are likely some different scenarios playing out, we're going to go through with property appraiser Gary Nikolits today some of the finer points that you need to be thinking about considering how assessments are obtained and how you can obtain more information about your own situation as well. And Lisa, each year we've had property appraiser Gary Nikolits on. He's always been a great source of information. You deal with people each day, and property taxes have been a very important issue for years now in the Palm Beaches. What are some of the more common questions and concerns that you are hearing from folks you're working with regard to property assessments, property taxes?
Well, I think there's a definite confusion about the tie between the assessment and actually the taxes that we pay. And I think that Gary's office a lot of times gets the blame of our taxes going up, or especially when our values fell, but our taxes really didn't. And I think that was why we started bringing Gary on, because we wanted for people to be able to hear directly from Gary about what they do and how that impacts our taxes. And this year, the questions I'm getting is, with the improved market conditions, are we going to see our taxes go up again? So it's really taxes are there's a nervousness about our future assessments of what's coming out this year.
Sure, and certainly given some of the spikes within appreciation in the past in property taxes, that's certainly something that is first and foremost in the minds of many people that live here. And by the way, I want to mention that if you have a question for the Treus, if you want to reach out to them, 7 days a week, they're available there for you, 561-972-8326, 972-8326. Let's bring in property appraiser Gary Nikolits. Mr. Nikolits, we know that property values have been rising in the Palm Beaches. And so with that in mind, it's likely that we are going to see some changes, I would imagine.
Well, you will see some changes this year, and this is the first year in, I think, the past 5 years that we've actually seen a trend line that is moving us in the right direction, upward in property values, and that's in all classes of property, whether it's residential, commercial, industrial. Everything has improved this past year.
One of the things that I think is an important distinction that often is a point of confusion for many people is what the timeline is that property values are being assessed under that we'll end up seeing later this year.
Well, yeah, that is a confusing piece of the puzzle for people. And what most people need to realize is that January the 1st in the state of Florida is known as the tax lien date. That's the date upon which all property has to be assessed. So you'll be getting your trim notice on August the 23rd of this year, just a few days away now. That value that's going to be on that notice was actually as of January the 1st of this year, and it's based on market activities that occurred during 2012.
So what's important for us to consider is that this is information from last year. And so the increases that we might have seen within certain properties in the Palm Beaches last year would be reflected, but none of the changes so far in 2013 would be.
That's absolutely right. Anything that happens this current year from January the 1st on will be reflected in next year's notices.
Okay, and so that's a really important piece of information. Now, when we receive this notice, and as you mentioned, it's going to be here pretty soon now, this is what's referred to as proposed, right?
This is your proposed notice of assessment and property taxes. It's known as the trim notice, and trim is an acronym for the word truth and millage. And the notice contains a lot of good information on it. It has your last year assessment, your current year assessment, has your last year's taxes, current year taxments, last year's millage rates or tax rates, and the current year's tax rates, and your rollback tax rate too. And you can compare all of those things to see exactly what's been going on with your property over the past year.
Lisa, when you're working with someone who's trying to evaluate what the overall cost of living is going to be, is this something that's important with the clients you're working with, seeing not only what the current property taxes are, but what the trend has been?
I think it's important that they are considering everything, how much their homeowners association dues are, how much their taxes, not just what they are, but what's going to happen when that property is transferred. One of the great tools on Gary's website is that they can go in there and see what the proposed tax is going to be. And a lot of our clients are doing that on properties when they're comparing two properties, because unfortunately, when they're looking at the current day taxes, that doesn't guarantee what it's going to be when they take over because of homestead and save the home benefits of the current homeowner. So a lot of buyers are being much more financially conservative and responsible.
Mr. Nikolits, one of the things that we've seen is that it can be even more confusing within the Palm Beaches because of how many different municipalities we have, 37, and so you have all these different sets of property tax considerations. Explain to us a little bit about how the property value factors in, but then also how rates, actual property taxes are determined based upon the municipality that one lives in.
This is always a point of confusion for a lot of folks because, as you mentioned, there are quite a number of municipalities, and then there are other taxing authorities as well. And depending upon where that property is situated, it can make a big difference in the amount of taxes that you're paid, even if the properties were the same value in two locations in Palm Beach County. One city may have a much higher tax rate, may have other factors that go into it too, and can exponentially make the taxes that much higher. But here's how it plays out. On July 1st of each year, my office delivers to all of the taxing authorities the estimates of the taxable value of their property for the current year. We also list on there what their tax revenues were for the prior year and what their taxable value was for the prior year as adjusted by changes that were made during the year for corrections that were made or for the Value Adjustment Board challenges where reductions were made there. So we supply them with all of that taxable information. They also have to supply us now, based on the taxable information and based on what they think the cost of services in their given municipality might be, they have to provide us with the tax rates. So the first thing they calculate is something known as the tax rollback rate. The tax rollback rate is that tax rate which, when applied against the current year's taxable value, will generate the same amount of tax dollars that municipality had during the prior year. So that's the balancing act. That's where it starts at zero based on current assessed value. There's your great equalizer, as we call it, your rollback tax rate. The second rate they have to calculate is their proposed tax rate. So based on their budget, what tax rate is going to be needed to be applied against the total taxable value to arrive at the amount of money they need for their budget. Those two things come back to my office. We then put those into our computer system, and they hit against each property within that taxing jurisdiction. And then we print the trim notice, which gets, again, is be mailed out on the 23rd. Mm-hmm. And that's how taxes are actually derived. We are responsible for the valuation side. The taxing authorities are responsible for actually raising the amount of money to fully fund their budgets.
Lisa, I know during the boom times that there was less general consideration for the total carrying costs of properties. In many cases, people were just wanting to own something that made sense to them at that particular moment in time, and we seem generally to care less about affordability. Do you actually find that because of all the different variances within property taxes in Palm Beach County, because of all the different taxing authorities, municipalities, that some people are actually trying to evaluate between particular cities?
I think that it's about 50-50. There are some people that want to live in a particular city. They really don't care what it costs. Mm-hmm. And yet, if you are budget conscious, there are, the taxes do factor into it, obviously, just like homeowner dues do. So, I think people are looking at it as in what is their total payment. And the good thing that has come out, at least temporarily, of this market correction that we have, and honestly overcorrection that we all have experienced, is that I think people are generally more financially responsible. And so very seldom do I hear a buyer really not at least considering the equation.
Okay. And so, that is a bit of a change that we have seen over the years. And Mr. Nikolits, I know that part of this is that this is a proposed notice. So this does not necessarily mean that the notice we have that we'll receive by the end of the month is set in stone. What timeline is attached to this proposed notice, and how do we take action if we're concerned?
Okay, there's two parts that I'd like to cover for you. One of them deals with the taxes, the other deals with challenging the assessment. On the tax side, on the notice, you'll see on there that there is a public hearing for each taxing authority that tells you that if you don't like what the proposed taxes are, this is your opportunity as a resident to go in and protest to the county commission, the school district, or city council or commission, and let them know that you're not happy with the proposed taxes. They have an opportunity to lower the tax rate at those public hearings. They cannot increase it above what they put out on the notice, but they can lower it. On the other side of it is the assessment equation. If you feel that your property is overassessed, which is to say that the estimate of the market value that my office placed on your property is greater than what you believe your property would have sold for, again, back on January the 1st, then you have the right to file a petition. From the mailing of the trim notices, there's a 25-day window of opportunity to file a petition with the Value Adjustment Board. The petitions are actually filed with the clerk of the court who oversees the Value Adjustment Board. There's a $15 filing fee for a petition, and that entitles you to a hearing before a special magistrate. Now, before that hearing gets conducted, there's an exchange of evidence between the property appraiser and the property owner. And by that, we simply mean if you have comparables that you want to present that support a lower value, you would give those to my office. We would provide you with the comparables that we used to set your value initially. And if there's a discrepancy or a mistake that my office made, we'll correct it. We don't have any problem with that. We just want to make sure the information that's out there is correct. If, however, we can't come to an agreement, you have the right, again, to go on to this hearing. And a special magistrate who really for real estate purposes is a real estate appraiser who's familiar with values here in Palm Beach County. They will hear your evidence, they'll hear the evidence from the property appraiser, and they'll decide which one of us is more correct.
How many people generally will go ahead and go through that process each year?
Well, in 2009 was our peak. We had over 20,000 petitions filed.
Okay.
Now that's 20,000 against 628,000 parcels. So it's really a small amount when you measure it that way. But this past year we had about 7,200 petitions filed, and that's a sizable drop. And I will tell you up front, of the original 7,200, about 15% of those folks got a reduction from my office without going to a hearing. Another 2% of the total petitions that did go to a hearing got a further reduction by a special magistrate.
So there is an opportunity to move forward if there's a legitimate situation. But generally speaking, it sounds as though the information that your office is providing seems rather fair given market conditions.
Well, we do the very best we can. Obviously, when we had that huge run-up in the market, it was difficult to keep up with the sales that were going on because time adjustments were happening on a monthly basis. Conversely, when the market bottom fell out of the market, it was just as difficult too because we had to try to stay up with what was going on, and that was difficult. But now we're back to, at least in this past year, a more typical market, which from our perspective, historically in Palm Beach County, is 4 to 7% appreciation a year. We have pockets in Palm Beach County that have gone up 20% or higher. Not a lot of them, but they have, and we've had other pockets that have actually gone down a little bit in value. We had a couple of municipalities that went down this past year, Loxahatchee Groves being one of them, went down a little bit in value, but by and large, every other municipality went up in value this year.
So it sounds as though it would be diligent as we prepare for this notice to be prepared for an increase of some sort, potentially mid to high single digits on average.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair to assume. Overall, our assessments are up about 5%. That's all classes of property here in Palm Beach County. But unfortunately, what we're also seeing from the tax rates that have already been submitted to our office that are going to be on the trim notice is that there were only 4 municipalities, 4 actual governments of 47 that levy taxes out there, that adopted a tax rate that was below their rollback rate, which means, in effect, their taxes are going down. Any tax rate above rollback is a tax increase because it will produce more revenue than that taxing authority had in the prior year. Conversely, anything that's below rollback will produce less revenue, so you consider that a tax decrease.
So theoretically, the politics and budgetary considerations of a given municipality notwithstanding, because property assessments would go higher, there would be theoretically more revenue produced. There might be more revenue generated to a given city so that they would potentially, if they decided to keep expenditures at the same level, be the opportunity for those cities to be able to help keep property rates, property taxes overall lower for their residents.
Yeah, it really depends upon what they want to do. A lot of municipalities will tell you that they've had to cut services during the lean times, and that now they're going back to reestablish a number of those services. And that's why it's incumbent upon taxpayers to go to those public hearings and voice their concerns. If they're satisfied with the level of services they've had for the past several years, there's no reason to increase those level of services. And therefore, there's no reason to increase the budget.
Well, you provided a lot of really terrific information. And Lisa, the one thing we hadn't talked about in a while, what percentage of buyers that you're working with locally are selling and buying, move-up buying perhaps within the Palm Beaches?
Well, I can speak from our personal clientele. It's about 50% of our market. And I think that with the interest rates kind of bouncing around a little bit, I think people have realized that this is kind of that opportunity before the luxury market continues to increase too far to get their home sold, which we can now accomplish pretty easily for them, and allow them to move up with good interest rates. And it also is great because there's the portability in place, which also you can get all that information on the Gary's website. So it really is the time to consider that move up buy. And a lot of people have decided that if they don't do it now, they may not be able to get to that next home, because if rates continue to rise and obviously prices continue to rise, the gap is going to get larger and larger and larger between where they are and where they want to be.
That leads to my final question for you, Mr. Nikolits. With regard to filing for homestead exemptions, portability, if we are rebuying within the state, how do we go about that, obtaining that information, and what are important dates for us?
Well, homestead exemptions have to be applied for by March of the year following the year that you purchased the property. So if you bought property in 2012, you would have needed to qualify for homestead by March the 1st of this year in order to qualify. Portability goes hand in hand with the homestead exemption. 3% cap that's in effect for Florida is what creates this portability. If your market value, just as an example, went up 20% this year and you're a homestead property, your assessed value will only go up 1.7%, because Save Our Homes this year, it's the lesser of 3% of the prior year's increase in the Consumer Price Index, which was 1.7%. So that's the increase there. So if you have a difference between your market and assessed value, that dollar difference is the amount that you can port to your new property, and you can port up to $500,000 to your new property if you're going up in the marketplace. What you would do is, as soon as you qualify for a homestead on your new property, there's also a form that you would fill out for portability, saying I'm entitled to portability and I'm requesting portability from my old property. We would then take that difference, the difference between market and assessed value, and we would apply that against your new property. And basically your market and assessed value your first year are generally the same, although they're always the same for the first year, unless you have portability. And portability will reduce your assessed value by that difference. So your market value in your new home might be $400,000. If you carried $100,000 from your old home, your assessed value will be $300,000. From the assessed value, you take off your homestead exemption and any other exemptions you qualified for, and that'll give you your taxable value. So there is a real benefit to utilizing that portability. And you have 2 years from the date of your purchase to actually use your portability. I don't know why anyone would wait, but it has happened.
And that is a tremendous benefit. because to many, if not the average homeowner, you're talking about potentially thousands of dollars in savings per year on your property taxes by being able to utilize those two resources.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And what's nice about it, it continues on because it follows your property. And if you should decide to move again, you can take it with you again. You can do it as many times as you want as long as you're moving within the state of Florida.
Well, tremendous information as always, and certainly do appreciate you taking the time with us. Again, property appraiser Gary Nikolits, the website, it is a tremendous resource for you to be able to go and look up information about any property in Palm Beach County, including yours. And as these proposed notices go out, as Lisa mentioned, an opportunity for you to be able to view everything online, a past history, really good information available to you. And Lisa, speaking of buying, you had a few homes that you felt were real good opportunities that you wanted to share with us.
I do. We just had a property in Legend Lakes in Lake Worth. It's on an acre. This property is on a beautiful large lake in the community. This property is minutes to everything. So you're close to the turnpike and great shopping. You don't have to go far to get a great area with large land. This was appraised at $385,000. It's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath. It's a really amazing deal right here in Legend Lakes. The second is located in Jupiter Farms. It's a 5-bedroom. It's a newer home, great floor plan, split design, and it has an office on top of that. It's a lot of space. The owner will entertain offers between $450,000 and $475,000. And my third deal is a great condo in Marina Grande. This property is on the 11th floor. You have beautiful views in that building of the Intercoastal, Singer Island, and even the ocean. It's a great property, $325,000, and they even allow pets in that building.
If you're interested in any of those properties, if you're buying, interested in selling, just have questions, the Treu's always available for you 7 days a week at 561-972-8326. That's 972-8326. And remember to tune in at about 8:18 every Wednesday for the Treu Real Estate 911 Midweek Update, where Lisa Treu gives you the latest information to keep you ahead of the curve in Palm Beach and Martin County real estate. We'll see you next time.